Hey there, I'm Kathy with the Traveling Homesteader and Gyroscope Farm, and today we're going to talk about emergency preparedness, um, and specifically 72-hour kits or grab-and-go bags. Now, I'm going along with this video and I've been trying to decide how to do it. And I had done another video on a pet 72-hour kit. In fact, the blue bag I did, and I'll link that video in here to kind of help you see that. But today we're going to do something a little different. So I belong to a particular church, and our church is known for being a prepared sort of group. And with that in mind, there was a smaller group within the congregation I belong to that we decided to get together to help each other with gardening. And the man who started that, actually, he's been featured in some of my videos, Rick. He wanted to get people together to help them garden, and as he puts it, to get food on their shelves. And so we started that up last year, and we went to a community garden. We built our own community garden. We've been helping each other out at our own homes with our own gardens, as well as helping other people. But what we also wanted to do was, in the kind of off season of gardening, or in the building up to the time that we can have produce to can and to preserve on our own, we wanted to kind of do some group activities that would help us in other ways to be prepared. And so that's where this all kind of comes in. And so I was asked, along with another woman that I know in the group, to kind of head up this this kind of evening of 72-hour kits. And I thought, I want to make it a little bit fun. And so almost at the, not necessarily request, but I belong to a group online that is about preparedness that goes along with our church, a worldwide thing. And so this Facebook page is about preparedness. And I found that there's a lot of people within that group that were really interested in how I did this event this night. And so I'm kind of sharing that specifically for them, but also for other people. So in case any of those people are watching, thanks for helping out and being interested enough to kind of spur me on to do this. But I wanted to start out by saying this is a bit of a group activity. And I know with preparedness that there are certain times that people say, nope, don't share what you got. And on one hand, I understand that. But on the other hand, you also want to help others be prepared themselves. And you want to be able to help out as you can. And so that's the purpose of this video, is to be able to help other people become prepared, or at least start. And so with that in mind, let's check out what we might do for this activity, becoming more prepared ourselves. So with this 72-hour kit activity, I'm going to call it, the basic premise was to get a group of people together to share the starting costs of a kit. And so the basic premise is, I actually got wind of it from when I was a kid, and my mom ended up going to a couple of different ornament exchanges at Christmas time. The premise was that one person would make the same ornament X amount of times, depending on how many people were coming to the event. So for example, if we knew that 10 people were going to come to this event, then my mom would make 10 of the same ornament. And then, say, Susie was going to make 10 of the same of her ornament, and Barbara was going to make 10 of her ornament. And then when we came together, that everyone may have come with 10 of one ornament, they were going to leave with 10 different ornaments. So they were going to have one of their own, and they were going to have one from each of the other ladies that came. And that's the same premise with what this is. And so the first thing is to know how many people are coming. And then you're going to have them bring 1 or 2, maybe even 3, up to a certain amount of money. Now, I put a cap of $10. So, again, we're going to know how many people are coming. know what's on the list of things to bring, have the person say me, identify what I'm going to bring, and have it be within the budget offered. So if you're going to have 10 people come and you want to have, in my case, $10 as your cap, and I might choose, Band-Aids, alcohol swabs, and paper, or booklets. So that, and I could probably do enough for 10 people for those items, and to make it a go. So then on the night, you have the opportunity to exchange different items to get started in your bag. Now, the other thing that I did for this was I said to people that they had to bring their own bag and their own 3-ring binder. So in my case, I was putting out the parameters of not necessarily how many people, but we had to know how many people. We'd invite X amount of people. Then they all had to respond whether they could make it or not. So then we knew who was coming. And then they had to know what they were bringing. And if you want to put a budget to it, you can. I happen to do $10 because I thought of some people, they may be on a budget. And I didn't want them to feel obligated to have to go over their budget. But then they also had to bring something to put their 72-hour kits in. So in my case, I said a bag, but you could do, like I have a 5-gallon bucket in behind me. You could do that, or you could do, I even had somebody say, well, my mother's interested, but she can't really carry a bucket or a backpack. What do you think we could do? So I said, well, why not do something like a carry-on suitcase that has the wheels on it and the little hand cart so you can just cart it along. She was like, that's brilliant. So depending on what you have the ability to do, you could do a bucket, a backpack, or even a travel suitcase as your packaging of your kits. Now, I've also used these totes as examples of a bit of a 72-hour kit. So that's the outset. Know how many people are coming, have a given list. If you want to put a budget on it, put a dollar amount for people to go by, and then also have a certain container that they can put their items in. And that's up to you. And as the point being is that this is to have them start, and it can always change and shift later on. So that's the main premise. Now, 2, the binder is important because of some things that we're going to put in it. And I'll show you that in a minute. But these are some things that you want to kind of know on the outset. Okay. And along the way, I'll be able to put some things down below, and I'll hopefully do a little reader ticker tape sort of thing along the way to show you some different things that you could have in as a list and or websites that you might find of interest for down the line if people want to get certain other products. Now, I will tell you about a particular site that I went to that's a 50-50. Good to start out, may not serve you well in the long run, but we'll see. So with that in mind, let's get started with some things that you can put on your 72-hour kit list. So on our list, we have prescription bottles, we have matches, we have bandages, which are good. We can also add tissues, tissues. And you can get those sorts of things at the dollar store. And so you want to make sure that they come in things like this. Now, it's a little side note for this, just as a little FYI. This is very handy to have for multiple reasons. One of them that I didn't realize until I went someplace, depending on where you are, you may need to use these for the restroom. Now, when I lived in China, everybody has a bathroom, right? Yeah, everybody you think has a bathroom, and in the bathroom, they come with their own toilet papers. That's it. Here in America, our bathrooms come with toilet paper. You don't have to bring your own. In China, you do. You have to bring your own toilet paper, even in a public restroom. So that's just something that you may want to think of too, is depending on where you are, you may need something extra like this for that situation. Now, another thing along the lines of kind of the first aid kit is tape. Now, this is a kind of a traditional plastic sort of tape, but you may want to think of paper tape if you have sensitive skin, or you have someone that you might know that has more sensitive skin, that will be helpful as well. Now, another thing on your list that you might want to think about getting is a toothbrush, which leads to toothpaste. Now, the sample sizes are what's kind of important to think on. I happened to go into a store one time and found this. This is the most different sample size toothpaste I've ever seen. But you can get things like this for your kit that would be really helpful. So sample size toothpaste plus a toothbrush. And again, with something like a toothbrush, having someone else purchase that may be a little bit off-putting, but I'd say having any given toothbrush of any soft, hard, medium, whatever, is better to get the hair off my teeth than nothing at all. And so that's something to keep in mind too. So let's continue on with our list and find out what else we can get. So the next thing that I'm going to show you is within this little container. Now, if given the opportunity, now this is one of maybe the more higher end item that may be more personal, but I'm going to put this out there. This happens to be a solar charger, and it does happen to come from a company called For Patriots. So having a charger like this of some sort is really kind of invaluable if you need it for your phone. If for nothing else, the games on your phone. And then while I'm going to add to the list candles. Candles are important for several reasons. One, you can use the wax for various different things. You can also use them for a little bit of light, but you should also have a physical flashlight. Now this particular one, I happen to like smaller ones, but if you have a larger one, that's good too. So a flashlight, or even what I kind of still call Coleman lanterns that are battery operated. And I actually have one that's solar powered. Now, something else you might want to consider for eating purposes are cutlery. Now, this particular one is plastic cutlery. It has all three items, spoons, forks, and knives. Clearly, it says 48. And this was, I just got these the other day, maybe a week or so ago. And I want to say that they were about $2.50, $3-ish for 48. And I thought, that's okay. That's a decent amount. So my thought was, at 48 pieces, somebody could probably get 2 sets of these, 2, maybe 3, for 10 people, and split it out and get an even amount for 3 days. And there's your $10. You just gave everybody cutlery. So that's a good thing too. So something else you might want to consider are thermometers. Now, I will point out that I have this digital thermometer for me personally, but I also have it in my animal bag. Now, my animal bag, I say animal because I have a kind of a grab-and-go kit that encompasses for horses and sheep as well as my dogs and cats. And I have a thermometer for my horses, because kind of left over from my horses, because I know how to take my horse's temperature. So if you have that same situation where you have a similar looking thermometer, I would ask you to mark your thermometer for the human ones versus the pet ones. Something else that you might want to consider, and they go on sale fairly regularly, are gauze pads. Now, I happen to get these last night at my local Safeway. And part of the reason why I bring this up is because, I don't know about you, but I've noticed a little bit rise in pricing of a variety of things. These were on sale for $1 a box. And I happened to be at Safeway last night for something completely different. And I got talking to the woman behind me who had a variety of, in this case, Signature Care brand, the Safeway brand, products she had Band-Aids, gauze pads, tape, the whole 9 yards. She ended up getting several of these because they were $1 a box. Yeah, that's right, $1 a box. This one in particular was running $3.99. Yeah, $3.99. I saved $2 a box. So I saved basically over $2 a box by getting them on sale. So that was a better deal than I could have gotten even at the Dollar Tree. And so going to places like the Dollar Tree or getting things on sale like the store brands of things like this will serve you long and well. So that's something you might want to consider too, is shopping sales at various different stores for a variety of the things you're going to put in your bag. So some other things that you might want on your list for this activity are to have things like Sharpies. Sharpie pens are awesome for marking different things on plastic bags, which is another thing, like Ziploc bags, freezer bags, sandwich bags, gallon size, quart size. Those types of bags will be helpful in the long run for packaging some of the things that you're going to put in one of your containers, whether it's a tote like this or a bag like that, or even in the 5-gallon bucket. Some other things you might want on your list is nail clippers. Those are handy too. Along the lines, depending on what you do, you may have access to things that others don't that you could get more easily, like these surgical scissors. Something else you can consider for part of your bag are, these little clips. I call them carabiners, but they can be helpful for a whole host of things. Having a set of keys on you if you need keys for your house, for your car. You can use them for hanging things on lines, which is also very helpful. Now, part of this event that we're doing is getting things like we have on this list and laying them out so that people can pick it up one at a time to put it in said container. Now, my container happened to be this one. And so I brought this and was able to walk down the line and put the items in my container here. Now, you're probably saying, Kathy, why would you use a box? It's not that easy to carry. Part of the reason why I chose a box, because one, I have a bag already, and I actually have that filled. So I also have my kind of 72-hour kit broken up slightly. So I know it's in my bag, I know it's in my box, but I'm also going to keep something in my truck. And so this is more for like a permanent resident in my truck. So that's why I chose this. So know where you're going to put your 72-hour kit as well. Are you going to have it in your car, at the office? Are you going to have it at home? How are you going to use your container or bag for your kit? Like for example, an emergency can happen at any time. If you live in a place where there's tornadoes, maybe you're at work and your spouse is at home, or your kids are at school. How are we going to kind of get everybody together so that they each have their own means of bugging out from where they are? And that's why I'm doing one for my truck. So with that in mind, as I get showing you this in a moment, these are the things that we came up with as part of our list that we can share. But you may note that I got another little bag here. And this little bag, I'm going to point something out. So part of our list is going to be food, right? So this is one of those things that you could have, depending on how you're doing your 72-hour kit event. You could have people your 72-hour kit could be for people, or you can have it for animals. So you can kind of do it a different theme for the 72-hour kit. In my case, we were doing for people. Now, there is a little bit of a debate as to what to have for food in your 72-hour kit. And on one hand, and I shouldn't say on one hand, it really depends on what you have for a heating source, is what it comes down to. So, to me, in my mind, what food you bring depends on how you plan on preparing it. So let me point this out. There is one school of thought that says that you should bring in your 72-hour kit already prepared foods or packaged foods that you don't have to cook. So those sorts of things might be something like, just happen to be fig bars or protein bars or that sort of thing. So it's things that you can just take off the wrapper and eat it. That could be one way. Now, another thing that you might want to consider getting along those lines is something like tuna. Again, here's part of the debate. Tuna, should you get it in the can or should you get it in one of the pouches? Now this happens to be salmon, but the tuna comes in this sort of package as well. So in this case, you can just rip open this package and start eating, in this case, the smoked salmon as is. And there's a protein for you. If you have the can, you kind of can't get into it unless you have a can opener. So that's another item on the list that you would have to have if you have any canned items. Some people say that the canned goods are better because these spoil more quickly. So that's part of the process of these 72-hour kits as well, is being able to go through your kits, maybe even seasonally, to check to make sure that they're up to date, both for food and for the season at hand. So those are some things that you may want to think about bringing too, depending on where you are and how you've set things up. Some of these lines are a little fuzzy about what you'd like to do. If you know that there's someone who is maybe gluten intolerant or a vegetarian, maybe tuna isn't great to bring for everybody if you know that there's a vegetarian in the group. You don't know if they eat fish or not. Like, for example, I have a friend who's a vegetarian, but I know she eats fish. So that might be okay. But if you have someone say that's just a straight vegan, they're not going to want to have much of anything. They're going to have their own diet, so I'm going to say, you take care of your diet, I'll take care of mine. That sort of thing. So at this point, I want to point out to you some places that you might consider getting your product from. So depending on where you are and what you do, and what kind of budget that you're looking at, you may want to consider going to thrift stores, but you may also want to consider going to like Walmart, the dollar store, Target. They all have great sales that happen, or even have things a little bit more lower priced than some more traditional places. But depending on what you get for down the line in your bag, you may want to consider Cabela's. You may want to consider going to places like that are other camping stores or camping related stores like Cabela's. But another important one to consider are any medical supplies. Two sites for those are Stat Meds or Stat Medical. And again, I'll be putting these bits of information down here and in the text below. But so Stat Medical and Jace Meds. Stat Medical has a little bit more of a variety of things that you can get relating to medical supplies. But Jace has, basically they're a pharmacy that you can actually purchase pharmaceutical items that are not just over the counter. You can get some prescription items in a case in a certain layout. And so that's really, at least for me, appealing, because I think it would be a good idea to be able to have certain antibiotics that you just can't get except through a doctor, except through the site. So that's something to look into as well, is having something like antibiotics, something that maybe is a little bit more longer lasting than their traditional Tylenol or aspirin. So that's something to consider as well. But let's kind of get into seeing what our group did for our listed items. Now, before I get too far, I want to point out this particular bucket. And as you can see, it's by a company called ReadyWise, and it's a 72-hour, it's more than actually 72 hours because it actually has 124 meals, which is more like a week's worth of food in a bucket. So that's something to consider as well, to determine what type of food that you want to have in your 72-hour kit. In this case, it is a separate bucket, its own entity. I've also gotten food from 4 Patriots. Similar idea, freeze-dried food or kind of prepared food where all you have to do is add water, hopefully. But in some cases, you may need to have a heat source and or water to add to it. So that's something to make sure you know what food you have, and if you need to have a can opener, like for the tuna, or a heat source to, say, make some oatmeal or pour hot water into. And in this case, this particular thing is a Bear Creek cheddar broccoli soup. All you need is hot water. Hot water is what you need for this. I suppose you could add cold water and have it kind of be bleh, but it also doesn't thicken up except if it has heat. In this case, it also has within the primer, and it's mostly at the bottom right now, but this has freeze-dried potatoes in it. That something like the freeze-dried potatoes needs to be fluffed, and it does that with hot water. This particular item was gotten at Costco, and my mom actually got this, it was around the pandemic, and I believe it was around $60. I went and got a picture of it just the other day, just last week, so for 2024 prices, I got that here, and so it hasn't changed too much, but there is a bit of an inflation price for this item. So if you just want to go get this at Costco, at least at the Costco in Eugene, Oregon, they had it. But you can also ask them if they don't, or if they're going to bring it back. But you can look for something like this at any given store. So now that we have a little bit more light, a little different location. So to let you in on what we got and did for our exchange, like I said, I have this tote, and that's kind of what I ended up putting my items in. But we ended up having hand sanitizer. Now we ended up having, and I'll show some pictures of our setup, we did have an abundance of hand sanitizer. And realize that hand sanitizer is, the basic premise is alcohol. And there is a proof to hand sanitizers depending on the type of alcohol that was used. You can sanitize different surfaces with this, which is rather helpful. So that was one thing on our list that we did. And then we also had just a notepad. And so you can have little lines, you can have one this size. Now, I'm going to come back to this in just a minute. But I had also gotten some extra things via the website called Temu. So Temu is another site that you can go to and purchase just about anything. And it's a Chinese-based site, and it's been kind of in the news lately. And honestly, it's a rock, paper, scissors sort of site. It is cheap. You can get a lot of things cheap. And so be careful about I'll say be careful what you buy, or go into it knowing that it's cheap stuff. And I'll show you some of the things that I got, and I'll show you almost exactly what I mean. But one of the women who was not there that night ended up she gave this cotton set. So this was the 3-in-1 cotton set of cotton pads, cotton swabs, and cotton balls. So the pads being like a facial, like I think of like putting astringent on and wiping your face off, as that sort of pad. But we also talked about masks. Now again, this could be, you can take into consideration a variety of masks. A basic mask like this is lightweight. You can go into the N series of masks like during the pandemic. But having a mask is good too. Something else that somebody brought was soap, bar soap. And if you get something like Irish Spring is not only good for, washing your hands, but it actually can help ward off pests and rodents. So that's something else to consider, having kind of some maintenance around where you are, so not have any or as few rodents and pests as you can. We also end up having someone bring towelettes, like for cleaning your face or your hands off. I've known people who bring baby wipes for just about everything. So baby wipes or towelettes, you can use either one. Somebody had actually brought some work gloves, and these were kind of nice. These were at the dollar store. And the nice part to this is one side's the rubber, and the other side is kind of a stretchy fabric, a breathable fabric. So having something like this around is pretty good if you're picking up trash or if you're moving wood or that sort of thing. And along the lines of trash, we also had somebody bring trash bags. And so trash bags is another good thing. And with these two in mind, I'm going to point out something. So where I live is in Oregon, and we ended up having a place in town that had gotten cleaned up. And basically it was from, the width of it was maybe half the width of a football field. So about 50 yards wide by about a mile long. And in this area, there were some people, at least that I had noticed, that were homeless and had been basically camping in the brush and in the woods. And almost suddenly one day, it was all cleared out. And our city commissioner had posted online kind of what happened and what was done. And he said within that 50-yard by 1 mile area, they'd actually removed 81,000 pounds of trash. 81,000 pounds. That's a freaking ton in that little area. They had 35 propane tanks that they took away. They had an unnumbered amount of medical waste, and not even to mention fecal matter that they had to, like biohazard stuffs that they had to take away. But then they actually took away 2 RVs as well, like motorhome RVs. And they took away washers, like clothes washers, clothes dryers, stoves, like home stoves, like stovetop with oven type stoves. And they had over 100 logged hours of people taking care of that space. So if nothing else, use these two to pick up your own trash, so that then other people don't have to pick it up for you. Because in this case too, with this particular story I was telling you about, they got the county involved, they got the state involved, and they got the city involved. And so that's a lot of red tape to get everybody together to just do this thing, to get it all done. So if you ever have the chance or need to get away, make sure you have the means of cleaning up after yourself as well, and dispose of your things appropriately, so you don't have to have, like what happened in my town with this homeless camp of people, kind of happen. So I think we mentioned to you about Kleenex. This was one of the things that we brought for items in our kits. We also had someone bring, I call this vet wrap because I worked with animals so much. Basically, this is the stretchy tape that you can, when you go and give blood at the doctor, they'll put a kind of this around your needle site for when you give blood. This is kind of what I call proper size for horses. This is what I got working with horses. Very handy to have around for medical purposes. And then fire starters, along with the matches. If you want to have a fire, having a fire starter is handy. Now, this is there is a difference between a fire starter and a fire log. In this case, I've used these in wood stoves, and I'll just take a piece of it, light it, and it helps light the fire. The log is meant for longer burning, so that's just a little difference. Then we also had, like I mentioned, we had somebody had brought gallon-size Ziploc bags along with quart-size bags. These are very helpful for storage of a variety of things, food. I happen to use these when I travel for dirty clothes, so I can put clean clothes in there, make sure they're all nice and safe and like taken clean. But when I also need to change, I can put them in one of these bags and then not have smells come out. Because as we know, we kind of sometimes by default have smells. So that's that. And because one of the people who came was a doctor, he had actually brought, and I actually put it in there, he had brought latex gloves, like doctor's gloves. And this is where we ended up using, again, our plastic bags. We just put the latex gloves in a bag, so they're kind of neat and clean. And again, once they're out of this bag and we know that they're used, then we put it in the trash bag and we know they're kind of used. But some things that we put together, and we kind of broke things up a little bit too, is we decided to have matches. And this is where having matches with the strike-on surface, there's a little strike-on surface here, together in one spot. And somebody actually had brought candles, like birthday candles, to help kind of light things as you go. So again, cool and dry, which is important. We'd also had a couple of people bring lighters. These handy-dandy lighters are pretty nice to have around. You can use them in a variety of ways, not only lighting things, but you can have them to like melt ends of cords so they don't fray, that sort of thing. Now, this next thing is kind of a combination of what somebody brought and what I brought. I will say this is part A. So these carabiners are really nice to have for a variety of reasons. This happens to have a keychain on it or a key ring on it, so you can put keys on it. But I also had brought, as something from Temu, I was able to get 5 of these whistles. Yeah, this is a whistle. It does the job, and it's nice and light. A little sad sounding at the moment, but whistles are good to have on your list as well. And so this is a bit of a keychain sort of idea. So you can have a spare set of keys and then something to call your people or anybody for attention. And so one thing that I got in Temu, and this is the item that I'm going to point out. So the intention is that if you're in your car and you need to break the window, that's what this end is for. And it has a bit of a weight to it, so you can break your car window. And then on the other side, this side, there is a bit of a razor blade that you can cut your seatbelt out if you need that. Now, this item was all of 58 cents. It is not the best made item. It has a weight to it up here for this. I suspect if it works, it'll probably do the job once and be kind of done. That's what I'm thinking. Once, maybe twice. But there are others that are better, that are more expensive. So therein lies where I say Temu has its limits. Don't expect a whole lot for the prices and you'll be good. So on something like this, you kind of get what you paid for at 58 cents for this sort of thing. Hopefully it works at least once. But then the last thing I got from Temu were these towelettes. Now you're saying, Kathy, that's not a towelette. That's kind of weird. So within this wrapper is a dried pellet sort of thing. And if you add water to it, it expands out and becomes a face cloth. And so that's kind of the interesting part of these too, is that you can have these kind of compressed pellets for having face cloths. So that's another, and so these would be good for like washing your body or washing down tables or whatever. So that's something else that we brought, were these compressed towelettes. In addition to the wet towelettes that you can get like for makeup remover or that sort of thing. We also had someone bring toothbrushes. So, and I mentioned before about having like a travel size toothpaste for a corresponding toothbrush. Now, this one did actually come with a lid. I lost it. But you might want to consider putting it anyway in a plastic bag and keeping it so it's relatively safe to be used. And then something else that we had somebody bring Band-Aids and like the large gauze pads. But two other things that I found on Temu, and one of them I was, again, slightly disappointed. So this is a mini of our vet wrap, and it'll do the job. I just was thinking it was a little bit taller, but it'll do the job too. But something else that I found that I'm really kind of excited about, and I might suggest this to just about anybody. These, you'll probably recognize, are Q-tips. Okay, you're like, what's the dark stuff? So the dark stuff in the middle is iodine. And these are individually wrapped iodine-filled Q-tips. So you can have these and use they're just one-use wonder. You break the tip, apply it to the site, and you can then use the other site for kind of a cleanup. But these are pretty cool because there's iodine in the barrel of the Q-tip. I had no idea until I saw it. So this was one of the things that I got on Temu, and I got a package of these of 50, and I want to say it was like under $2, which I thought was decent to have a set of 5 for each person in the group. So it was 5 per person to give to 10 people. That was my little kind of handy dandy nifty item. So those are some of the things that we had. And one thing I want to point out to you to add to your list is WD-40. This is a handy dandy item to have, and you can get this. I think I got this I may have gotten it at Dollar Tree, but you can get it at any hardware store this size. Make sure you get the little red nozzle. That helps out too. Part of the reason why I say WD-40 is because it's a lubricant. You can use it on a variety of things as a lubricant, but you can also use it as a fire starter. Get that handy dandy lighter out, and together you can throw some flames. It's a really cool trick. And I don't know if I should have said that on YouTube. But that's an idea too, is using it as a fire starter. So these are some things that we brought. Something else that we had in our kit that was given to us was basically a paracord. Now this is rather important for things like if you have a tarp for shelter, you can use it as between two trees to have it kind of draped over the road. Something else that I want you to consider is the next thing that we're going to talk about is having documents on you. And so this is where having your 3-ring binder that I mentioned earlier available to you. So part of what else we did in our group to help the cause to get people started was we handed out these little packets of information. And this is what can go into a 3-ring binder, or you can keep this, again, depending on what you are using for your container. But this is important because there's a couple of reference pieces and a couple of pieces that you might need to have on you as you are parting ways. But the two things that we wanted to encourage people to have within their 72-hour kit was a contact list and a medical list, or personal medical information. And both these items I actually got on Canva. And if you want to go to canva.com, they're a great thing that they have a lot of different options for doing all sorts of creative things. But I wanted to find something that was kind of already done, and this was a way to go. So the contacts list and the medical information is something that you should have filled out before anything happens. That way, like in case of an emergency, you have actual physical written down information, phone numbers, addresses, because so often we have our cell phones and we just have to press 1 for, mom, 2 for our neighbor, or, we just press, we just say to Siri, hey Siri, please call dentist, that sort of thing. So having it written down actually has the information right in front of us. Something that you might be able to find at your local town hall or government office are these two items. My pocket plan, and then this is Emergency Go Kit Passport. And both of them have similar information to the contact and medical list, but they also go into things like mapping out your neighborhood, mapping out your town, that sort of thing. So that way, these are kind of good little things to have, and they fit in a purse. They fit in a bag pretty easily. I wanted to kind of share with you some other things that you might want to put on your list that could be things that you get for people in your group. But something that you might want to look into for adding to your into your kit, again, having a healthy set of bandages and wipes and gloves is kind of nice to have. And in fact, I have this first aid kit. This is one first aid kit that you can have. If you get a first aid kit of your choice, they come in a variety of forms. That's kind of important to have. But then travel size items like soap, like body wash, shampoos, conditioners, that sort of thing, toothpaste. The travel size stuffs kind of go a long ways. And even I got thinking about like laundry detergent. So that's something else you can consider in travel size too. And this particular box I have is more of what I call my first aid kit. And so, but it has some things in it that are more 72-hour kit related. Bengay, I have it in case. Something you might want to consider too is getting I want to say duct tape. Yeah, duct tape. But again, depending on what your food situation is and how you're going to be preparing things, having something like a thermal mug or a metal mug that you can like cook over or have hot things in or cold things in is really handy. No matter what size flashlight you have, getting the proper batteries to go with it is really nice to have. Um, but again, this is the better variation of what I showed you earlier from Temu. It's a little bit thicker, it's a little bit more robust. But the nice thing about this too is it has a flashlight and it has a little button that you can press. But this does not run on batteries because there's a little hand crank and you can simply turn it and you can see the light goes on. So that's something that you can kind of find in places too. I happen to get this through our local electrical co-op. We have our power company is a co-op. And so they were doing an emergency preparedness thing and they were giving these out, which is kind of nice. So getting things for free from different places is kind of nice. Having things like this, handy dandy screwdrivers. Now this is an interchangeable one, so there's a flat head and Phillips head of one size on one end, and then you can take it out and Phillips head and flat head of a bigger size on the other end. And again, this was something that I got at, I think, Harbor Freight for either for free or like $1. It was rather reasonable, and I got a couple of them, and I have them in a couple places. So having a tool like this is rather helpful, along with what I call a Leatherman. So if you have a Leatherman, that's really handy too. Now I call this a Leatherman, but it happens to be by a brand named Gerber. So I hadn't really known of Gerber, but I thought of Leatherman. So that's something to have, have a little plier, and then within there's like the knife, kind of Swiss Army knife idea. And they have a lot of different tools in here as well. So having a multi-purpose tool like this is also very helpful. Just something that you can kind of go. And one last thing I'm going to kind of point out. So this is something that you might consider having as well. Are these little blankets. This is just a little, I call them the metal blankets. It says emergency survival blanket, and it's thermal material evolved from insulation used in space exploration. So you too can be high-end if you get one of these handy-dandy blankets. Now, I'll be honest, I ended up using these, and they really work. I used it one time. I was traveling from Oregon to Virginia. I was moving back east for work, and I happened to have one of these, and I was moving with my dog, my dog Cody, and we were stopped in Wyoming at Easter, and it was snowing. I mean, there was like blizzard stuff. And we stopped overnight, and I had a bunch of blankets, but I wanted to make sure I stayed warm in my truck as it was snowing outside. And I happened upon one of these. I happened to have it in an emergency kit, and I used it, and it really worked well. So that's something to consider. It's lightweight, it doesn't take up a lot of space, and it works well. So having these in part of your emergency preparedness kit is kind of a handy thing to bring as well. So these are some things that we got and we use and could be of help to you. There's a myriad of other things that you could add, and you could probably talk to just about anybody, and that you could probably bring a house worth of stuff in your 72-hour kit. The basic premise is it's for 3 days, 72 hours. So whatever you bring should be personalized to you. It should be light enough for you to carry around, or at least you should have the ability to carry what you have. Whether it's in a backpack, it's in a tote, it's in a suitcase, like a carry-on suitcase. Anything that would help be easy enough to kind of pick up and go. And it should have all current things in it. So like if you have, I don't know, a hurricane in September, you're probably not going to be needing snow pants. You're probably not going to be needing, like winter clothing. You might need a sweater. You might, depending on where you are. But again, if you have a snow blizzard, you're going to be trapped at home, and so you're not going to be taking off in your car unless you can. And again, you're not going to be wearing shorts, so like shorts and flip flops, because that's the wrong time of the year. So make sure that whatever you do is seasonally appropriate, suited for seasonal appropriateness. But it's also something that you can literally pick up and go with whatever abilities you have. So hopefully this has helped you kind of see what our activity did, and hopefully seeing some pictures along the way of what we did has helped you see kind of what we did. And remember, this particular project or event, however you want to call it, is meant to help each other out and give you ideas about what you can and can't do, or what you have the ability to go find. So remember, simple, easy peasy kind of rules of the game. You're going to have a set number of people, and it can be whatever number you want. You don't have to limit it, but just everybody has to be known. If there's 5 people, there's 5 people. If there's 30 people, there's 30 people. But you want to make sure you have everybody's names, that they're aware of this list that you've put together of some of the things that like we've talked about today. If you want to put a dollar amount to your list so that people don't feel obligated to go above, that's fine. Set your dollar amount. But then also have each person bring their own container to put the items in. So when they come, they're going to put their one item, whatever that might be, flashlights, tarps, if they bring a food, say a freeze-dried food, water, whatever their item is, they're going to put it in one place lined up. Okay, so if there's hand sanitizer, there's Band-Aids, there's vet wrap, there's a fire starter, there's paracord, then each person can have their bag or their container, and then they can go down the line and pick it up. Pick one of each item. So there's their start. And then you're going to want to kind of go over with them what else they can add to their bag. So you can say, if for some reason no one brought any item for cooking, think about cooking and say, okay, these are our options for cooking or for food. This is what you might want to add down the line. Or if no one brought any tools, like a Leatherman or a wrench, you can say these are some tools that you might want to consider getting and adding to your item, your bag. So that's kind of how it goes, is kind of just have an enjoyable evening and have a discussion about what could be added, what probably shouldn't be added. That's just as important to this, is to say, you probably don't need skates. You probably don't need, paintings. Although, you might want to bring some games. That's something else that you could put to your list, is maybe bringing a deck of cards. Deck of cards kind of goes a long way, and they're small. You might want to bring, like I have a bunco game. That's a pretty small thing to bring. You could have some puzzles. So something of entertainment that can go in a bag would be also nice. So I hope this has helped you out, and you can see kind of how things play out. It's a little bit longer than normal video, but it takes a little explanation sometimes. So I hope you had a good time, and thanks again for checking us out. If you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button. And remember, you're helping somebody out by subscribing, and it just takes a click. So thanks again for stopping by Gyroscope Farm and the Traveling Homesteader, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Have a good one. So basically what I've brought here tonight are just some samples of things that you can do for 72-hour kits or bug out bags. Now this one, I'm going to point out just because it's the biggest for the time being, and this is for my dogs and cats, or for my dogs. And this I started because I had horses. I had a whole other wraparound of stuff, And so I think you have some dogs, right? Do you have animals at all?
I do.
Yeah, and so I think a lot of times people, and you don't have any dogs, right?
I don't think about them.
Yeah, a lot of times people don't think about dogs and cats, or even horses. Sometimes people don't even think about horses or cows or whatever. And that's why I mentioned about bringing a little binder to have information for them, but also for you. So this is where this information comes in, is that basically what we've done is copied several pieces of information for you to have as a reference, and you can put it in a binder like this for yourself, and or extend it out to like your animals. And so in here, if you guys want to look this out, I did end up putting this on another video, and basically I have it mainly for my animals. My big thing is a bucket, and it's a little 3-gallon bucket. But I have, you know, wraps for my horses or other larger animals. I have a stethoscope. You know, I have a toy. So I have various medical things. But there is a company that I worked with called Norwex, and they have, it's all non-chemical, and so this is just some of their product that I have because I didn't want to have stuff hurting my animals and the water at the same time. So this happens to be a dishwashing liquid. So stuff like that you can add to, and then have it be a wipe that I can do on them. And you guys can talk, it's okay.
Just put your stuff.
So this is something, but I've also included things that you can include in your other bags, like lights and stuff. So this one, because most of you guys don't have animals, you guys don't have to be suffered to this. But this has some stuff in it for me as well, in case I forget something along the way. So like I have a personal first aid kit. But then have you guys ever heard of CERT? I think you have. Have you guys ever heard of CERTs? The CERTS?
That's certified.
Yeah. And can you like tell everybody what that is?
He carries the kit in the back of the car, so it's got a helmet or a hard hat.
But what does CERT stand for?
I have no idea.
So it stands for Community Emergency Response Team. And with that hard hat, do you know what else that's supposed to do?
So that you are known that you can be one of the first, if you're first on a scene, you could assess what's going on and so on and so forth, so that they know that some things have been done. You know what it means, don't you?
Are you certified too?
No.
Okay. So in essence, this is the bag that they give through CERT, and we happen to get at least my group got certified through Eugene, and so they give us a bag with things like this to turn off gas, so gas at your home. I think you might have brought some like what I call vet wrap because I use it on horses.
Mine's actually vet wrap as well.
Yeah, so you can use that for a whole host of things, and then goggles, and so these are things to help. And I've actually referenced in a couple of places the CERT information. You can actually get access from their website online, which is part of our handy dandy contact information list. And so with that in mind, this particular packet that everybody should be able to get has a contact list that you can fill out, and it's both sides. And then there's a 72-hour kit list. There's tons of lists that you guys can choose from. And like we had a list started, but this was just easy to put together. So this is the same list back and forth. And then there's a 5-gallon bucket emergency list. Anyway, and then, so yeah, then.
The one thing that I saw on that one, emergency preparedness on Facebook, it talked about having a bug out bucket that had food and stuff in it that you just grab and go. So you had all the food and everything that would be
Good water.
Yeah, and that's why I've included, there's the 4 Patriots 72-hour food kit. And so kind of what I thought we were doing tonight is that we would kind of get more of the starter kit, and that we can add things like food as we go. But then there's this reference guide and down that I put in for that you can see on YouTube. There's online stores like Sage and Plow, Stat Medical. And if you know some other medical references for online for this sort of thing, you can share it with us too.
Most of the stuff I did isn't available to the public.
Yeah, so you can have
And you have to buy like 1 million of everything.
yeah, a stash of stuff. But yeah, and so there's just a lot of different information, and I'll include some of this stuff online, but also it's included here for you guys to see as well. But some things you might want to consider too to put in your kits are things like, this is a solar power for charging your phones or charging lights. So just having various different lights. One of the things that, as I was kind of looking at different things, somebody mentioned about having, like, we have candles that we're going to use, but having battery operated lights in various forms.
Oh, that's nice.
Have it is kind of important too, so that we have, because candles will work, but only for so long.
But the candles were more for,
Fire starting.
yeah, a lot of that was
Yeah.
fire starting and have a little bit of wax, and you could light the wax
Yeah.
on fire. And
But yeah, just having some solid different things, and you guys probably know
is
that.
that a solar one that you were just
Yeah,
looking for?
this one,
Where?
this one's solar, and I've had it for almost over 15 years. I got it through Costco, and there's actually batteries in it. The batteries died long ago, and it's these flat ones.
Right.
And anyway, they died long ago, but it's still working off the solar.
So what's the number on those? Are they like a 2032?
Yes, CR 2032 3-volt.
So that's like the most common size. So you
Yeah.
can buy like a 24 pack of them for like $6 or
That's good to know.
something at Costco when they go on coupon.
Yeah, cool. So yeah, but I just have been using the solar part of it, and I'm like, yay! So that's good to know. But I think, Betty, you and I talked to, I think it was you, about knives and things, and I happened to get this Leatherman for free, and I got it through a thing I was going through, and it just,
Is that a Leatherman or a Gerber?
Gerber.
I was gonna say, I thought it looked like a Gerber.
But yeah, so having a Leatherman or Gerber, either one, is very helpful, because then you have multiple tools. But I'll just kind of leave some of these open too, to show you some other things if you want.
The DW40.
The WD-40 I happen to use because fire starter.
That's a multiple uses for that thing.
So yeah,
Yeah.
WD-40, as long as you have the little red straw. I actually taught my dad about that one. He was like, you can do that? I said, uh-huh. So take your nice lighter, spray.
Hairspray.
There you go. So that's kind of a multiple use item too. But having things like a substantial first aid kit, having your freeze-dried food. Now, in 72 hours, what do you guys expect to happen?
Cold, get cold.
What if it's the summer?
Okay. Bugs, you want shelter.
Yeah. So you want a variety of things, but you also probably may not have power. You may not have fire access. I mean, around here we get a lot of the fire restrictions, especially out like where I live. Having fire is like bad news. So having something that's a contained fire or having something that's ready to eat is also something to think on.
So that's why I mentioned having the sterno cans,
Yeah.
because you could just do the sterno cans. I don't know how long they last. It's been years
Several
and
hours.
years since I've.
But they also make like the chemical heaters, so you can heat food without even starting a fire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of the if you're doing freeze-dried stuff, you need it cold.
Yes, I mean, just like that. But you can also make your own sterno can with corrugated cardboard
In
and
fact, yeah.
paraffin wax and just.
It doesn't burn clean.
No?
They are, so in Scouts we call them bunny burners, and they are dirty, nasty, smoky, but it'll get stuff off.
So something though that you guys in talking about that I was going to mention that there's a YouTube channel called the Provident Prepper, and they are members of the church, but they talk about all sorts of different ways to prepare things for any situation. But they talk about for like homesteading, they talk about for canning, they talk about just being prepared for a lot of things. So they were just bringing up some of those things. One thing I wanted to point out, if you have children or dogs, these are awesome. Do you guys know what these are?
They're lights.
Is it a light?
They're lights, but they go on your bike. I saw them and I thought of my dog putting it on the collar.
Wow.
And so these are cool because they actually have the battery in them, and they have a white light and then a red light, and you can have a blink. So having stuff like that, I happen to get them for free at something, but I wanted to point those out because those are fun. But something else that I've gotten for you guys in case if you want them was something like this. They haven't come to me yet, but this is for breaking car windows and for cutting seat belts. So that's another one.
How much
that-
are those?
I got them for 58 cents a piece. So that's why I'm giving them 50.
Wow.
This one happens to have a little light, like a flashlight, but it's a crank light. And so you crank it up, and then that goes. So the ones I got do not have the flashlight, but they do have the other things. So that's something.
Crank
Radio?
Radio would be
Yeah.
good to have in your bug out bag, so
Yeah.
if you can get reception.
Now too, having things like to cook in, like this, are good too. This happens to be just a thermal cup, but that helps. But I'm gonna dig into this real quick because there's something on the bottom that I think kind of everybody should have, or at least consider. But along the way, if you guys get the chance to get some of this Aloe Vesta cleansing foam, do you guys, some of you guys might know this. Do you guys know about this?
Yeah, so it's
This is
a
aloe.
water-free cleaner.
Yeah, it's a water-free body cleaner. I happened to get these two from the hospital when my dad was in the hospital because we were thinking we had to take him home. But having this it's another way to get clean. And so, but
Where'd you find it at?
I got it at the hospital.
I can get it off Amazon
Oh,
too.
okay.
But yeah. The last thing I wanted to show you out of here, if I can get it, is this. Can you tell what this is?
So water.
Yeah, it's a water cube.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, and so it's foldable, so when you're not using it, you can just fold it up, and then, but when you need it, you can just fill it up. So that's something else to consider too for a bag.
Where can you get that?
I happen to get this, so Blatchley Lane is our electric co-op, or electrical company, and they were doing an emergency preparedness thing, and they were giving these away. So if you just keep your eye out for things, you can sometimes get things for free. But another websites that you can probably check is, like everybody knows Amazon. You can get a whole slew of stuff on Amazon. But I found some of my things off a website called Temu, T-E-M-U. Yeah, and so you can find a whole host of things.
Is it reputable?
It's newer, so
It's kind of like Wish. It's a Chinese,
It's a
most of it's
Chinese-based
Chinese
company.
imports. They're
You
Yeah.
can take more of that if you want it.